lot of craziness that happens. And Lou, I don't know if he hears me. Maybe he'll want to get in there. Maybe he won't get in at the end of the show. I told him if you wanted to hop in at the end of the show to actually step in. But if he doesn't, stick around after the show is over so you can hear Streetwise, because it's going to be, I guarantee you his show is not going to be as delicate as my show is. He doesn't have a way of mincing words, a lot less than I do. You know, am I being, there he goes.
You invite me on, is that it? Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think people can watch me setting up. I'll put my stuff in if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Okay. Don't mind.
Pleasure with you. I'll just come back in a moment if you guys are still listening.
For everybody that's watching on YouTube and that's watching on Facebook,
they'll see me getting dressed.
They'll see Mr. Telano getting dressed. He always likes to be dressed to impress whenever he's on camera. And we'll have him with us in a moment. I don't know if I need to give Lou a proper introduction, but Lou is one of the people that has had an enormous amount of experience in New York City, has held many positions throughout the police force, law enforcement, has worked closely with Rudy Giuliani. And again, I'm not putting Lou because he's siding with one way or the other. I just feel that Lou always has something very valuable to provide every time he's on the show.
Come on. Happy birthday, Trevor.
Thank you, sir.
Am I on the air?
You are.
Oh, okay.
You're on the air.
Oh, I got myself now. Nick, I want to thank you for inviting me as a guest. It's an honor, you know.
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit from everybody else, other than just my personal point of view. It's always good to see what a person from another sector, another industry, another point of observation.
Oh, okay.
Feels about how everything is going. I mean, you've been very animated, and you've talked about a lot of the stuff that has been going on right now, especially in New York City.
Well, yeah, and I do, and that's why I'm being punished by Twitter. They froze me.
Oh, they froze you?
Yeah, I'm frozen, yeah. And every week I'll get Joe Blow and 20 others follow you, and I get a minus instead of a plus. So I probably lost about 10,000, their figures, the way they do their edition.
Wow.
So, because of what you just said, I'm extremely political. My organization, New York Veteran Police Association, and my first vice president, Richard Weinstein, who's listening to you, Nick, by the way, he's on now listening to us. First organization to endorse Donald Trump. So, we create a lot of enemies,
So you pissed off a lot of people, basically.
Happy about it.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, happy about it.
This is my policy always in life, and I always stand by this. If you're going to take a position, take that position and own it. That's always been my mentality. This is the way I believe.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the people outside, unless I'm completely wrong, I'm big enough to understand if I'm not correct in a factual way, and somebody corrects me. I'm big enough of a man to be able to accept that and learn and grow with it and say I made a mistake. But when I know I'm right and I truly feel a conviction towards what I'm saying, I own it and I just run with it. And what you went through as far as with Twitter and social media, I've gone through it to some extent as well. I've lost a lot of fans. And,
really?
Yeah. Well, a lot. Well, I've been on a major campaign and as far as a major push for landlord rights.
Oh.
And there's a lot more tenants out there than there are landlords.
Well, I was involved in that because I was the chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department. And I was involved in, so I had to make a lot of decisions in regard to landlord tenant,
Well, I wish you were involved with it now because I'd get your ear and I'd be able to.
So I was involved in other stuff and I saw a lot of tremendous political stuff going on here and people calling up and, they were asking to do things that I got to be careful. I'm talking to you, let me put it that way. and that was a political controversy. So I know if the landlord has a hook or connection, with somebody, you get a favor. If the tenant belongs to a major tenant group, right, association, they get things done. But Nick, first of all, I'm going to say this: you're like a throwback for your age. I got to tell you.
I am.
Yeah, you got one of the old-fashioned, which some think they're great, by the way. This generation, the 21st century generation, even though you're a little older than that, but you're still in that, you like from my school to a degree, because when you say you own it, it's yours. They're not gonna cop out and like they do today. You watch the politics. So it's not my fault. His fault.
Yeah, people love to flip flops.
Yeah, and they flip. Exactly, they flip.
Well, I'm in that demographic where I'm considered a Generation X individual.
Yeah.
So I'm not a millennial. I'm not a baby boomer.
Yes.
I'm basically one of those people that are a bridge between the millennials and the.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand the psychology from both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do because you have two groups that are very polarized as far as where their mindsets are. Where the group, myself being a Generation Xer, is the ones that are trying to be the middle of the road kind of group and be able to understand both sides. And it makes it very difficult. But with the whole landlord-tenant situation, it's gotten out of hand. And you're right. There have been a lot of favors that have been done in the past for the landlord groups, and there have been a lot of things that have been done for the tenants associations in the past.
Right.
But the thing is, it's gotten so extremely lopsided right now as far as how difficult it's become to be able to say what's justified and what's not.
Yeah.
And it's really become a major burden, especially on the small landlords, the ones that they can't afford to keep the expenses going on places.
They're getting murdered, right?
Well, they're getting killed right now. You have the eviction moratorium that's in place, and you have a scenario where you have a lot of landlords that can't. Some of them lost their jobs, so they're unemployed.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they had a 2-family or 3-family house that they live in themselves, and they were depending on that extra income coming in from those apartments. Now the state turned around and said, "You don't have to pay, regardless if you have COVID or not. You don't have to. You can't get evicted until January." I mean, we're talking about 9 months now.
Yeah.
Since March. We're talking about, and you have some cases that were pending from before that are still held back. So you have people that have not collected rent for a year and a half, 2 years in some cases, and because of the system the way it is, and the tenants are saying you can live there no problem. They're telling the landlords, you have to keep paying for all the utilities.
Correct.
You have to keep paying the insurance. You have to keep paying your mortgage. Some of them got for mortgage forbearance, but that doesn't really mean anything if you still eventually have to pay it back.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have to pay your property taxes. So how is it fair when you're turning around and telling somebody, you pay, but they don't have to pay? And at the end of the day, that person that has that 2-family house or that 3-family house has to be out on the street, and they lost their house. How is the government in a position to say, you can live in a house, but you're going to get kicked out? Because that's basically what they're doing. They're picking sides. Why they're picking sides? There's more tenants out there and more votes out there.
Let me ask you this. Why are the landlords always seem to be the bad guy?
You tell me.
Why is that? I mean, you're like...
You tell me.
Yeah.
They've always been labeled as the villain.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disgusting, to be honest with you, because you have landlords that are really doing the right thing. Are there slumlords out there? Are there horrible landlords?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You got the worst of the worst out there. You got some pretty bad tenants out there too. You know?
Correct.
So from each side of the equation, you definitely have bad situations.
Well, it seems that the less leverage is toward the owners. In other words, the perception is automatically, you touched on it a second ago, is that automatically the perception is they're wrong.
Yeah.
They're the villains.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's always been the case here in New York.
They have to fight it to show that, that they're credible.
And even then, they're never made whole. They're never made whole at the end. When you're watching ABC News, when you're watching CBS, when you're watching NBC, what's the popular story? Look at that nasty landlord.
I know.
You know, they put a landlord with horns on his head. You know, they love to go down to Brooklyn and go after that whole section of landlords and go after them. And some of them are bad, some of them are good. I tell you something, the majority are good people that are just trying to survive and do the right thing for themselves.
It's sad. I've been running the sheriff's department in New York City. I've seen a lot of that, and I've seen landlords had to walk away. They had to abandon their buildings. Are they still doing that to a degree?
Well, it's going to continue.
They couldn't afford to maintain it. And then the tenants, and I have to say this because I've seen it, the ones that took advantage, all right, took advantage of the landlord being a so-called villain. They took advantage of it. They wound up getting stuck because the landlord took off. There's no oil being delivered, right, and things like that. The lights go out, so maybe they deserve it, you know, for taking advantage of the situation and milking the poor landlord.
You're absolutely right about that. And here's the other thing: a lot of them want to turn it into more public housing. I'm sure you've been into many complexes that are considered public housing.
Mostly.
What are the living conditions in them?
Well, here's the thing. See, what you just said, it's a good point. When they talk about all the things that are going on in public housing, right? They blame the city of New York, and they even blame de Blasio, who I don't agree with. But in that case, somebody got to fess up and say, you know, it's the tenants that are urinating in the elevators. It's the tenants that are going on the roof landing, and it's the tenants that are destroying the building. $90,000 a door because they have combination locks in the city housing, and they break it 2 or 3 times a week to fix. You know, nobody wants to talk about the villains who are, I hate to say this, the majority of the destruction in the city of New York and the housing authority are from the tenants themselves.
It happens a lot.
It happens quite often, yeah. And they don't. In my time, if we raided an apartment that they were dealing drugs out of, they'd throw them out. The city would get rid of them. They were drug dealers. Not today.
But that's the way it should be.
Not today.
That's the way it really should be. Or if
Yeah.
there's a tenant out there that's collecting Section 8 or SSI or any type of other government funding thing, and you see them driving a 600S Mercedes.
Long time. Very good.
How does that make
So
sense?
you look at these, touch on something that we used to talk about. You go into the housing authority parking lot, you'll see a Mercedes, a BMW, and you might see a Porsche, right? And today, when Obama came in, he was added to by giving them food stamps, right?
How does that work?
They get welfare, and they got a Porsche parked in the housing authority park, and they complain, I want a new cabinet, I want a new refrigerator, and they get it, by the way, and they get it, because, that's the way it is right now. So the city had the big nut. First of all, the housing authority never makes money. It's always, they run in the red, there's no profit in the housing authority. But I understand that you might know, they have some, they want to sell some of the housing projects to private ownership. I don't know if you've heard that.
Well, they've attempted that in the past many times. There was a rejuvenation in the 80s in Harlem and many other areas, East New York, where they were selling the properties for very low numbers, as low as $1 for the whole building. But we're talking about buildings
Correct.
that they're not for like the weak-hearted. So the landlords will go in there, spend an enormous amount of money to renovate them, bring them up to what the standards are. Sometimes it got so bad they just had to give it back to the city because they couldn't handle it.
They can't make a profit.
And that has a lot to do with the restrictions that the city has imposed on them. You're talking about a very difficult situation. If they were more lax on the eviction type of situations and the rights that landlords have, I guarantee you that private landlords can take over every single housing complex out there that's public housing and bring it up to what it should be and bring it to its glory of when it was first built.
When it was, exactly right, the purpose of it.
And go back to the original concept of we have affordable housing for the intent of giving people the opportunity to get their foot in the door and give them an opportunity to be able to get themselves started and not stay here for the rest of their lives.
Correct.
Instead, the culture has made it where, oh, woe is me, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. That shouldn't be the way it was.
You see, that's another thing you touched on. Like I say, like a throwback. They have people living in public housing generation, women I think are four that live in the city housing projects now, generation welfare, right? And try to catch them with the rent too, right? And the destruction. Plus, the grandparents or great-grandparents who originally owned the apartments are long gone. The kids just take it over and they pay the rent when they want to. So who really owns that apartment? That's another thing that the city, private, like you said, private would be tough on that. Private would not take.
Well, it's not only that. They'll care.
Oh,
the city will do just the bare minimum of what's required.
Correct. Yeah.
But they won't individually care what the building necessarily looks like.
Right.
When you own something and you go and you shine those windows and you make sure the floors are spotless and gleaming, you, as a landlord, as an individual owner,
right,
you take pride in that.
Yeah, exactly. And the people that live there are supposed to also take pride in that.
They should.
Yeah, because these all these they talk about rats, a lot of rats, and they're blaming the city. Nick, it's the tenants that are throwing garbage out the window, not the city of New York. They're the ones that are throwing garbage in the hallways. They're the ones that it's just mind-boggling. But you can't blame them because it's political.
Well, I blame the city for enabling them.
Exactly.
Enabling them and allowing this to continue.
Yep. And
why does it happen? Because there's more votes on one side than the other.
Ooh, you're right on target.
And it's just simple as that.
You're right on target. Only that way.
It's just simple as that.
It's always politics, yes.
It all comes down to politics.
Yeah.
And the only way landlords will ever be able to fight that, and I don't know if they'll ever happen because most landlords want to do the right thing, is if they stop paying their property taxes all at once.
Yeah.
See what happens then.
Yeah.
Because 44% of the income for New York City comes in, or New York State actually comes in from property taxes.
Yes.
So let's turn off the valve and see what happens then. But it won't happen because every individual landlord is worried about it, and they're like, I want to do the right thing. I don't want to lose my building. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to I don't want to get fined to death.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't happen because they generally do the right thing. So we'll see what this is going to be a saga that's going to continue.
Wow, I'm going to talk about that for an hour, and I'm going to open phones, and I'm going to get people to sort of what they think in regard to the presidential election.
Well, I didn't even get into half of it. To be quite honest with you, there's so much to get into, and I'll probably do another live stream. I'll probably continue next week on what we're ending off with because I don't want to take any more of your time.
It's not good to have you talking about this stuff. By the way, you cannot be a new millennium because you work for a living. You're a business guy. Otherwise you'd be out there with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So, but you're a responsible guy. But it has to do. I got to tell you this. Has to do, which I find, has to do with family. It's family structure.
How you're raised.
Yeah.
I generally actually like to work.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a purpose.
Correct.
I get up every day to go to work. It's what I need to do. On that note, Trevor is knocking me out.
Yes,
and we're gonna easily move into Lou.
Yeah, before I go on, Trevor, you do my little promo first, all right? Yeah, so people know who I is.
Okay. So good night, everyone. We'll be again with you next week, just like every week on the Real Estate Plate, 6 to 7 p.m. Stay tuned for Lou Telano.
Thank you.